Welcome to another rainy day in the shop. We are about to head out, go grab a drive shaft, and pick a few things up. We'll be welding tonight and tomorrow and get on with the installs. Headed back now. Plan is go ahead and try to get that drive shaft on. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to hit it really hard. The weather's not going to be too good. I'm trying to keep the momentum going, so I got started on the sliders and the bumpers, but I had to step out and grab more MIG wire. While I was away, the Tom Woods drive shafts also showed up, and they came out perfect. The last part we were waiting for was the fuel filler neck assembly. That came in from the Middle East, which means I can start plumbing and measuring for all the fuel system components that we need. All right, so the Tom Woods drive shafts and the fuel filler neck showed up. The fuel filler neck I have already checked and it came out perfect. It fits just the way the factory meant. Now I'm gonna switch over to welding the rock sliders in and finishing that up so that I can focus on the front bumper. I've run into a little bit of a snag. There is some cross member interference, so I've got to stop welding for a second, get the engine hoist in here, and move some things around, and then I can jump back on the tools. All right, last bolt for the transmission mount is out. I need to move these cross member mounts in. I'm gonna cut all of this off to set it on the table to get all the rough dimensions sorted out. All right, the sliders are done and trimmed up flush with the frame. I had to do a little bit of grinding to get the bottom edge done. Now I'm gonna move on to the transmission cross member, which is gonna take about shortening maybe 3 inches on either side to fit inside of the frame rails. And once that's done, then we can move on to the winch plate.
Future me here, and I have to say I'm so glad my daughter came out to work with me and keep me company while I got this transmission crossmember knocked out, because it didn't come without its setbacks. I wish I knew what was coming, but one major win turned into a major fail.
All right, I gotta stop there. We've got an issue again. The transmission crossmember came out great, and I'll actually, you know what? I'll show you what that looks like right now. The transmission crossmember came out really, really nice, but I'm gonna go back and readdress the engine mount side so that the output flange on the back of the transfer case is at the angle I want it at.
All right, this definitely merits a little bit more explanation. So reworking the engine mounts wasn't something that I took lightly, because it meant cutting into time and progress to other stuff. I'm definitely not the most knowledgeable when it comes to engine swaps or anything really, but I had to learn that it was worth undoing something here and doing it better a second time. I learned a lot actually in the process of how to set the engine and transmission up the first time, so it will be applied later on some other project eventually, but this was something that was totally worth doing because we gained a lot of ground clearance. Not only that, I was able to set the drivetrain and the powertrain up at an angle that favored the drive shafts, probably reducing some vibrations eventually and helping us get everything lined up just that little bit better. Here, I was able to get the engine mounts lined up, and thankfully, everything married up as planned. So it was time to transition and move on to the frame side. This was a little bit trickier because this frame slopes back at an angle and it creates sort of an offset cut on this piece of tube. So here I am squaring off this piece of tube and setting up to make a cut based on that cardboard template that you saw me making earlier. So I got this all set up on the chop saw, and I actually made a mistake the first time. So fortunately I had enough material to make 2 more pieces. The lengths were a little bit off left to right, so I got the engine centered back up exactly and strapped into place to make these cuts again, which were super easy with this chop saw. It was the best $25 I have ever spent in terms of a fabrication tool for sure. The engine mounts were going to be a little bit tricky to figure out, so I gave myself a little bit of extra room to work with, and that ended up being extremely helpful because this was a lot of just cutting and grinding to fit. But we got everything set up, and you can see here the general idea for how it's going to be mounted and oriented in the frame. All right, so I need to get this engine mount off. Once that's done, then I'm going to pivot and move on to cleaning up and preparing for the next phase. It's going to be a massive amount of packaging the entire front end together. There are some really cool things that I've finally figured out that will probably work, and I want to take you guys along for that, but I'm not going to talk about that in this video. That's for the next video. So let's go ahead and get these engine mounts off and wrap it up today. All right, so just like that, the engine mounts are gone, and we can finally move on to cleaning up. I gotta prep and get a whole bunch of stuff ready for the next phase because we're gonna be packaging steering, and there's an option on the table right now for the steering that we're going forward with, but it's gonna require a pretty extensive amount of work. What I'm trying to do is lock everything down that has to be where it is currently and work around that and make other more flexible items kind of live in a nice home to make this whole complete system. So anyways, I'm going to clean up the shop. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next one.